Bill.
Leader of the House.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that at its rising today, Parliament do now stand adjourned to a date to be fixed.
The question is that at its rising today, Parliament do stand adjourned to a date to be fixed. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that Parliament do now adjourn.
The question is that Parliament do now adjourn. Mr. Murali Pillay.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, members of this House may remember an accident that happened in March last year, where a wheel that became dislodged from a trailer truck travelling along the KJE bounced across the road divider to the other side and struck a motorcyclist travelling in the opposite direction. He died at the scene. The runaway wheel also narrowly missed another motorcyclist as it tumbled across the road. It was sheer luck that others did not come into contact with this wheel and suffer the consequences. That motorcyclist was the late Mr. Slamat Rakisan. He was 57 years old. I knew Mr. Slamat. We were fellow community leaders serving together in Jurong GRC. He was a well-loved gentleman. The Honourable Minister and Grassroots Advisor of Yuhua GROs, Ms. Grace Fu, in her eulogy posting, described him as a humble and compassionate leader who also brought much laughter with his Tom Jones and Elvis Presley impersonations. I met him just the weekend before he died at a community music event. The randomness of the accident leading to his death remains disconcerting. Just 3 months after the KJE incident, there was yet another instance of a loose wheel coming off a Malaysian registered truck, this time on the West Coast Highway. This rolled across the lanes and smashed into a car travelling in the opposite direction. Thankfully, the driver of the car only suffered a minor injury to his right ear. Wheels come off the vehicles as a result of mechanical failures. These unfortunate accidents illustrate how mechanical failure in heavy vehicles often lead to accidents that may cause serious injuries or fatalities. Regrettably, these two are not the only instances of accidents involving mechanical failure in heavy vehicles. In July last year, a private bus driver realized the brakes of the bus had failed, and to avoid a collision with the stationary cars in his path, he mounted a curb, intending to maneuver his vehicle into a nearby tree for a controlled crash. Unfortunately, he hit a woman cycling home from work along a footway. She died at the scene. It was determined by the coroner after an inquiry that the brake failure was due to a missing drain valve component, which led to the bus having no braking ability whatsoever. In such fatal accidents caused by mechanical failure, as opposed to driver negligence or recklessness, these are often ruled as misadventures, and there is little that the authorities can presently do to impose criminal liability for the accidents, although civil remedies such as insurance claims remain available. This state of affairs is, with respect, unsatisfactory because the parties responsible for maintaining the critical component parts of the heavy vehicles that failed escape criminal liability for causing the accidents. I respectfully suggest that the government consider imposing liability on the owners and operators of the heavy vehicles to hold them to account for accidents arising from mechanical failure that may be obviated through proper maintenance. It is well known that a significant number of fatal accidents involve heavy vehicles. In a joint circular issued by the Ministry of Manpower and the Singapore Police Force, it was noted there was an increasing trend of fatal and injury accidents involving heavy vehicles, from 816 such accidents in 2013 to 877 in 2015. In the workplace context, the figures of fatal accidents involving heavy vehicles are also concerning. In September 2017, Minister of State Mr. Sam Tan highlighted that in 2016, 22 workers were involved in fatal accidents caused by moving vehicles. This was a 47% increase from 2014. He also highlighted that in the first half of 2017, there were 379 injuries and 7 fatalities caused by vehicle-related incidents. This led to implementation of new workplace vehicle safety initiatives, which is very welcome. It appears that there are no publicly available studies which has been done to ascertain how many of these accidents involved mechanical failure. What is clear is that such accidents do happen, whether in Singapore or overseas. In the 2015 Major Accident Investigation Report conducted by the Australian National Truck Accident Research Centre, it was stated that mechanical failures accounted for 5% of crash incidents in Australia, with tyre failure accounting for 72% of losses attributable to mechanical fault. In the United States, federal statistics show that the mechanical failure plays a role in 12% of all motor vehicle accidents. Common type of mechanical failures include malfunctioning brakes, faulty steering systems, faulty headlights or taillights, and tyre and wheel issues such as worn tyres and over-tightened wheel bolts. Under our current system, there are 3 separate regimes that deal with different aspects of road safety involving heavy vehicles. On one end, the traffic police focus is on the culpability of the driver, such as for reckless or negligent driving under the Road Traffic Act or sometimes the Penal Code. This would cover accidents caused by the behavior of drivers of heavy vehicles, such as speeding and red running. However, while it's an offence under the Road Traffic Act for a person who causes a heavy motor vehicle to collide with any buildings or structures, there is no specific offence under the Act which attributes responsibility of the owners and operators of heavy vehicles for road traffic accidents caused by mechanical failure that is preventable. Let me illustrate this through a recent case. Last year, a public bus driver was acquitted of the offence of rash driving. He was accused of driving above the speed limit while negotiating a bend along the slip road of Bukit Timah Expressway into Dairy Farm Road. The bus crashed, a passenger was killed and another was injured. The driver testified that he experienced brake problems and, in his words, engine runaway, which caused the bus to accelerate on its own. The prosecution's expert witness testified that he found an air leak in one of the bus air pipes, which could have affected the brake efficiency, but he could not conduct a brake efficiency test due to the damage the bus sustained in the crash. The learned district judge accepted the driver's defense and acquitted him. What is evident from the case is that there was no focus on the bus company to ascertain whether it had properly maintained the brake system of the bus. This is understandable because of the current legislation. The Land Transport Authority enforces the periodic vehicle inspection regime as well as the requirements under the Road Traffic, Motor Vehicles, Construction and Use Rules, which lay down the specifications for critical component parts. The objective is to minimize vehicular breakdown and road accident. With the exception of omnibuses, which are inspected every 6 months, trailers, goods vehicles and all other buses are subject to mandatory inspection only once a year if the vehicle is less than 10 years old, and once every 6 months if the vehicle is more than 10 years old. In the intervening period between inspections, there always remains a probability that the vehicles are driven without proper maintenance as recommended by the vehicle manufacturers until just before the inspection. This is a moral hazard that must be addressed. Whilst non-compliance of these rules per se give rise to regulatory offences, there is currently no provision that pins liability for non-compliance of these rules, giving rise to the fatal accidents. In other words, these rules operate independently. LTA does not routinely open an investigation to identify the responsible party behind the mechanical failure leading to the fatal accident. Finally, the Ministry of Manpower has oversight over workplace safety, including vehicle-related accidents which lead to workplace fatalities. For example, the workplace health and safety regulations stipulate that it's the duty of the owner of any vehicle used in a work site to ensure that the vehicle is of good construction and roadworthy. It was recently reported in June 2018 that 1 out of every 3 deaths in a workplace last year was caused by a vehicular incident, making it the #1 cause of workplace deaths last year. To address this issue, MOM has launched the new Drive Safe, Work Safe campaign to raise awareness about good vehicular safety practices, and is also trialling the use of devices that track and monitor the speed of heavy vehicles. Whilst the Workplace Health and Safety Act allows MOM to prosecute errant employers for safety lapses leading to injuries to workers, this Act is focused on addressing safety, health and welfare of persons at work in workplaces. It does not go so far as to cover situations where such vehicle related safety lapses cause injury or death to members of public. To illustrate, the late Mr. Slamat's accident does not constitute a workplace incident, as he was not a worker. However, if the driver of the trailer truck was injured, that would be a workplace incident. As may be evident from the above outline, I would respectfully suggest there is a gap that, practically speaking, under the regime, there may be no further investigation if mechanical failure or malfunction had caused the accident, since this would likely be beyond the ambit of the Road Traffic Act and the Workplace Health and Safety Act. In the joint MOM and police circular I mentioned earlier, as well as the Workplace Safety and Health Guidelines, it was recommended that, firstly, heavy vehicle owners should implement a regime for the maintenance of all vehicles in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations, on the basis that a well-maintained vehicle is more likely to work better and last longer. Secondly, a daily pre-operational check is also recommended as a simple and useful way to spot potential risks or defects before the vehicles are operated. However, the limitation lies with the fact that these recommendations remain as non-mandatory guidelines, and there is presently no applicable provision that triggers an investigation and prosecution of owners and operators for not complying with the same. It is time for us to close these gaps, such as to mandate compliance with the manufacturer's maintenance schedule, the keeping of maintenance records, and/or the conduct of the daily pre-operational checks. These records will serve as a treasure trove for investigators of fatal accidents, looking into whether or not the owners and operators have contributed to the accident by not properly maintaining their vehicles. The imposition of criminal liability on owners and operators of heavy vehicles for mechanical failures of critical component parts leading to fatal accidents would serve as a deterrence against skimping on proper checks that should be conducted on heavy vehicles and reduce the incidence of such fatal accidents. The level of maintenance and keeping of maintenance records will also improve. In this regard, I wish to highlight 3 practical points for consideration by the government. It's important for regulations to cover not just owners but operators. This is because it is not unusual for individuals to own heavy vehicles such as cement mixers or tipper trucks. These individuals then support operators, which tend to be the big companies, in activities such as construction and logistics. Practically, it's these big companies, these operators, which will have the greatest influence over the maintenance standards of vehicles used in their operations. Second, from a liability viewpoint, it should suffice if the mechanical failure as a result of lack of maintenance played a contributory factor, as opposed to a direct or effective factor that led to the fatal accident. Otherwise, we may create a loophole for errant owners and operators of heavy vehicles to take advantage. Finally, I suggest that provisions be introduced to make it easier to impute liability on corporate bodies for negligent and intentional acts of its employees for not maintaining the critical component parts that led to mechanical failure and contributed to the cause of the fatal accidents. Without such provisions, it will be difficult to impose criminal liability on corporations, and consequently there may not be a sufficient motivation to change the corporate culture within the corporations to ensure strict compliance with the maintenance regimes. Apart from this, we may also wish to consider incentivizing companies to leverage on technology to deal with issues of maintenance. For example, the provision of a technology fund to assist in implementing fleet management systems that are able to track maintenance records and alert the owner when a vehicle is due for periodic inspection in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendation. Properly maintained vehicles are more likely to work better and last longer. Hence, the interests of the owners and the operators of heavy vehicles should be aligned with this initiative. Sir, please allow me to conclude. Heavy vehicle owners and operators play an important role in ensuring that no other road user will be imperiled as a result of mechanical failure in critical component parts due to the lack of maintenance. The legislation must be updated to reflect this plain fact. Ironically, Slamat means safe in Malay. When Mr. Slamat died, the road was not safe for him. After his death, I do hope that measures that I propose, once implemented, will make the road safer for road users who may otherwise fall victim to accidents caused by mechanical failure.
Senior Minister of State, Dr. Jaina.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sir, I thank the member for raising his concerns about the safety of heavy vehicles. Indeed, safety is an essential part of these operations. And our thoughts and condolences to Encik Slamat and all his friends and family. It's a tragic story that he shared with us. Today, the Land Transport Authority, LTA, requires all in-use vehicles to be regularly inspected at the LTA-authorized inspection centres, ensuring they are roadworthy and that their emission standards are met. These inspections are conducted every 6 months to a year, depending on the type and age of vehicles. As the vehicles age and as they are used more intensely, the frequency of inspections goes up. These inspections cover key vehicle components and systems, such as brakes, steering, tires, and exhaust systems, to ensure that they are in good working order. Besides these regular inspections, LTA and the traffic police also have powers to call up vehicles for ad hoc inspections to enforce their safety and roadworthiness. Heavy vehicles tend to be used more intensively and are therefore more prone to wear and tear. We've also imposed statutory lifespans on heavy vehicles to ensure that the population of heavy vehicles on our roads stay young. Except for public buses, most heavy vehicles are subject to a maximum statutory lifespan of 20 years, after which they must be deregistered and can no longer be used on our roads. Public buses are subject to a shorter statutory lifespan of 17 years because they are very heavily used. It is the vehicle owner's responsibility to ensure that their vehicles are properly maintained and pass LTA's vehicle inspection requirements. In the case of heavy vehicles that are typically used for commercial vehicles, the responsibility lies on the companies that own these vehicles. The companies are incentivized to ensure that their vehicles are well maintained, because those which fail the inspection will not be allowed to be used until the fault is rectified. And this will have an impact on their business operations, and the companies will also have to bear the costs of additional inspections. With regard to Mr. Muralipure's suggestion to mandate a preventive maintenance regime, our view is that it is not necessary to be prescriptive about the maintenance regime, as our inspection regime is already very frequent and stringent. We take an outcome-based approach which balances the imperative to create a safe and working, to create a safe working and commuting environment with the regulatory burden on the vehicle owners. Such an outcome-based approach also leaves room for new technologies to be brought in very quickly to improve maintenance regime and improve safety, rather than being very prescriptive of the technology and the process. The member has asked about government's powers to prosecute businesses which do not properly maintain their heavy vehicles and as a result cause fatal accidents. Under the Workplace Safety and Health Act, employers have a duty to take adequate measures to ensure the safety and health of their employees at work. This includes the proper maintenance of equipment used by their workers, including heavy vehicles. And employers who fail in their duty under WSHA, regardless of whether it is an individual or a body corporate, may be prosecuted. In the case of an individual, the employer may face a fine of up to $200,000 or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or both. In the case of a body corporate, the employer may face a fine of up to $500,000. This is under Section 50 of the Workplace Safety and Health Act. Persons, including body corporates, who cause death by a negligent act can also be charged under the Penal Code. Persons who have been found guilty may face imprisonment for a term up to 2 years, or fines, or both. This could include persons who are negligent in maintaining their vehicles, thereby directly leading to a fatal accident. MOM's Work Injury Compensation Act also provides for the payment of compensation to employees for injury or death suffered in the course of their employment. Depending on the circumstances of the case, the compensation payable could be up to $262,000. In addition, accident victims can also seek legal recourse by taking those responsible for causing the accident to task through civil lawsuits. In summary, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we do have a comprehensive framework for vehicular inspections and laws to hold vehicle owners responsible for ensuring their vehicles are roadworthy and safe. In 2016 and 2017, there were a total of 85 fatal accidents involving heavy vehicles, both on road and in work sites. 85 fatal accidents over 2 years. Less than 5% of these accidents involved claims of mechanical failures, less than 5%, of which some are still pending investigations. More often, heavy vehicle accidents are caused by the driving behavior. Even as we take errant drivers to task, it's even more important that we continue to work with companies to promote a safe driving culture and ensure that drivers have sufficient rest. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The question is that Parliament do now adjourn. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.